colleague, friend, host of Up in Flames podcast with Mo Murphy. Thank you for coming on. We finally have you on the show.
Yeah, 100%, bro. I've had you on a couple times. We talked about this, so it's always nice linking up and talking hoops with you, bro. Definitely looking forward to it.
First of all, congratulations. You have a newborn. You're doing your thing. That's one thing that is, they say, is the greatest gift of them all. Like, no matter what you do in life, there's nothing greater than that. So how's that been?
Bro, it's been it's a challenge because I already had one. So I got a 3-year-old and then I got a newborn. So it's been a challenge, bro. With my daughter being potty trained, having to go back to change the diapers and stuff. That's been the only adjustment though, and sleepless nights. But you figure it out, bro. But definitely glad, especially to have a newborn son too. So now I got a mini me, so I'm set for life now.
Oh, you're gonna have to show him some NBA film early, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna have to get him in the film room early.
Well, you're doing great work. I don't know how you balance it all, but you do it. You're building your podcast. You're always putting out great content. You're always someone I truly enjoy talking hoops with. So there's no better guest now to talk about this topic. So Russell Westbrook, obviously sets a triple double record, breaks Oscar Robinson's record. And we talked about this. I just talked about it with, who did I have on the podcast? Sean Alcide, and we talked about Westbrook's value in these triple doubles mean more to me. At first, I was a little bit critical of it. I'm not just a huge stats guy.
Mm-hmm.
I understand its value. I understand its greatness, but I'm just not like, oh, triple double, that means everything to me. It didn't. But with these triple doubles, they're resulting in wins, which I can't take that away from him. Like, now I'm more impressed with these triple doubles because the Wizards need him to do it. Like, I see a direct correlation from when he does it to their victories. What have you made of Russell Westbrook this season? Because I've said, in a weird way, I'm more impressed with Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul this season than any other point in time in their career.
I mean, yeah, dang, I never thought of it like that. But now that you say that, I do kind of, like, it's just something about Westbrook and CP3 this year. Like, I think because this year, it's like validating their greatness in a sense. Like, Westbrook's greatness can kind of be unquestioned now. He's the triple-double king. I think CP3, like, time and time again, you've seen him go to a franchise, and they turn into winners. And now you see that on, like, the national TV stage, and it's, like, for everybody to see. Like, Phoenix is great. CP3 is in the MVP conversation, which has been a conversation he hasn't been in years, like, literally years. Westbrook, he's not in the MVP conversation, but he's starting to get, like, some acceptance. It's like he was able to shake off, not winning in OKC. People still talk about that. I don't think a championship is that important to Russell Westbrook. I think it is to him as an individual, but I don't think it's that important to his legacy, as everybody else says. And then you look at Chris Paul, they're number 2 in the Western Conference. They look like they can make a championship run the year after not making the playoffs. So I do think, like, in a sense, this might not be their greatest seasons ever as point guards, but this does seem like, I think this is like the validation season for both of them. And, like, I do think Chris Paul, you don't have to look at him like, he's missing a championship. And I think Russell Westbrook, now that he has that record, no matter what, it'd take a couple of championships for you to remember Russell Westbrook as a champion. I think he's going to be remembered as Mr. Triple-Double. He's a triple-double king. It's going to take 2 or 3 really good championships, I think, for you to remember him as a champion. I think now it really doesn't matter. He's Mr. Triple-Double. And like I said, Chris Paul just validates what he's been doing. He goes to a franchise, they win. No matter what. I mean, look at last year, obviously, OKC. Now you see Phoenix, they don't make the playoffs. They're the 2 seed. Like, and Chris Paul is an MVP candidate. He's not, to me, he hasn't been the best player on Phoenix. I think it's been Devin Booker. But, like, when you take the word MVP and you take valuable, that key word is valuable. And it's been changed into a narrative, and who's the best player on the best team is usually who it goes to. But if you just look at true value, there's nobody more valuable in the NBA than Chris Paul or LeBron James. So I would say that's why Chris Paul really on the map too, because he's back on the national stage. Obviously, he was at OKC, but you didn't see a lot of them into the playoffs. Nobody really watched OKC. The Clippers, it's been a while since he's been on the Clippers. Obviously, in Houston, we know how that kind of ended. We still question they could have went to the finals had he not got hurt. But, Yeah, it's crazy that you say that. Like, it's like now that put my mind everywhere. Like, man, it was something weird about Westbrook and CP3, and it's almost like I fell in love with Westbrook's game and defending Westbrook this year. More so, I wasn't too hard on him, but like, cause I always felt like he was really great. I just felt like he's never gonna win the championship, which might put him in that I'm the greatest player to never win the championship category, which he has an argument from here on out that he could end up being the greatest player to never win a championship.
Right. And I think we just I always say expectations are everything. What are your expectations going into something? And that will help determine what you think of it when it's done. And I think we just accepted Russell Westbrook, like you said, what his brand is, which is triple double. And I think us as media members, us as fans, I don't think we put that expectation of, oh, he's going to lead you to a championship anymore. And so now that we have a different expectation for him, we can kind of appreciate his greatness a little bit more. And he became iconic. It's almost like people say, like the Allen. Now it's going to be the Russell Westbrook. He's an icon. He's polarizing. He's exciting. He's just almost like I feel like we're appreciating his greatness now while we have it, because when it's all said and done, we're going to look back at it and be like, man, what was it, like 182 triple doubles and he's still going. That's just something that you don't do. Like, that's a record that no one thought was going to be beaten or broken, and he did it. But I brought up those two people for a reason. Now I don't want to use the word hate. I try not to compare all-time greats, but that's just a part of the game. It is. And
you have to do it. It makes fun conversation.
I do love it. I love it in the context that you can appreciate both of them. And then when you're comparing the all-time greats, it's really just you have to dive deep into and nitpick and, oh, why is this person better than the other? Because at the end of the day, they're all great. It's just a lot of preference, a lot of opinion, and you have to really nitpick. CP3 and Westbrook. And I've seen a bunch of lists come out. I know Perkins did a list. Guy Shad did a list. Now, we're not going to go by Shad's positional dictionary because Westbrook would be a hybrid guard. Chris Paul would be your traditional guard. But for the people listening and for the lists that have come out, we've seen the point guard lists. It's like Magic's, the Currys, the Isaiah Thomases, the Chris Pauls. Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook, I've always had this debate with, and it's so interesting because I get both sides of it. When you go by accolades, Westbrook is the more decorated player. But when you go by probably the traditional point guard view, Chris Paul is the better player. So when you compare these all-time greats, when it's all said and done, obviously the story's still being written. But if it were to end right now, right today, who is higher on your all-time list between the two, Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook?
Man, that's one of the toughest questions I could be asked. Because I'm gonna be honest, before this year I would say Chris Paul, but I would have never said Chris Paul by a mile. I think about 2 years ago I started making the argument after his second year of averaging triple double. I'm like, how is Westbrook not considered a top 5 point guard right now? This is about 2 years ago, and I had a couple of my homeboys look at me like, bro, he's not even close. And I'm like, well, you talk about point guards. What do? They run the floor and they get assists. To average a triple double, you have to be a 10+ assist guy. So I would honestly have to say, people won't agree with me, but I think it's Westbrook by a hair. I think he has something to his name that Chris Paul will never have. It changes if Chris Paul wins the championship. If the Phoenix Suns win a championship this year, I think all that changes. They're both players who don't have one. And I know Westbrook's going to have Mr. Triple-Double to his name, but Chris Paul will have that championship on top of all the other accolades. I think they're neck and neck, and I'd give the nod to Westbrook because Westbrook has that something most of all time next to his name, and neither of them have a championship. So I think that does make a difference to me when I'm ranking people on the all-time list. When you have something of all time, I mean, I like Chris Paul. I really do. I love Chris Paul, but I think I would put them at about 4 and 5, and I think I'll put Westbrook ahead of Chris Paul.
Now, I think we're going to date ourselves 10, 15 years from now. And I think we're going to be the old heads where we talk about you didn't watch them play, because I feel the new generation will look at it in the record books and say Westbrook, because you're going to see, like you said, Mr. Triple-Double. And Paul's value is not something you're going to see through stats. I think Chris Paul's value is going to be something where you had to watch the way he impacted teams, actually physically seeing it. Because if you lived in that generation, you'll say he went to Houston, he went to the Clippers, and then he went to Phoenix. obviously the Hornets at the time, and he made everybody better. But when you look at it as far as just without watching the material and just looking at the stats and the accolades, the newer generation will say Westbrook. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And like for me, I love like Chris Paul is one of my 5 favorite players ever. Like he goes on the list of just my 5 favorite players. But I do like have to look, and then you got to speak 20 years from now. People aren't gonna understand. It's kind of like, with our age, bro, we didn't really get to see Jordan live. But I watched the Hardwood Classics. Yeah. I understand how impactful Jordan was, but everybody our age didn't do that either. But I got to see, like, no matter when it was, whether it was in 2005, I was watching old games, I got to see. So, like, 20 years from now, you would have had to see Chris Paul because to me, Chris Paul kind of came in the wrong era to be a true superstar. If you really think about it, like, he comes where there was Kobe and LeBron. Like, he came right after Kobe and LeBron were running the league. Obviously, Carmelo, Dwayne Wade, those are like the names. Then Dwight Howard came and, like, he's a big man. He started running the league in Orlando. And then you transfer over, and it looked like when he was with the Clippers, it would have been his time. And then you have OKC, and then they split up. You still got KD and Westbrook. You got Steph Curry, who's doing things we've never seen. So all that was like in Chris Paul's time. So I feel like his greatness doesn't get appreciated because he never was like a superstar. But like I said, there hasn't really been more valuable players to their team than Chris Paul and LeBron James. And to be in the same sentence as LeBron James, that tells how great you are. But the stats don't tell you everything about Chris Paul.
And that happens. I mean, you look at Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers only has 1 Super Bowl. Tom has 7. You look at John Stockton and Malone. They never got a ring because there was Michael Jordan. It happens sometimes. You just the timing doesn't work in your favor where you're going against the all-time greats or the all-time great teams. But to your point, I think that's why championships don't absolutely mean everything. I think they do mean something, obviously, but they're just not everything. And I want to talk about another point guard while we're on the topic, Steph Curry. And obviously, this isn't the Dynasty Warriors. This isn't the 73-9 season. This isn't his MVP, technically his MVP season. But again, almost like a Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook situation. In a weird way, I'm more impressed with Steph than I've ever been because he's doing something with this roster that a lot of people, can you carry this team? I think what he's done this season is open up those doubters' eyes and saying, look, this is how great I still am. Because even though he's not on that dynasty team, we're seeing a Steph Curry that we haven't seen in a long time because he does have to carry the heavy load. What have been your thoughts on Steph Curry this season?
It's crazy to me that Steph Curry had to come into this season with any type of chip on his shoulder. But it almost was like Steph Curry coming to the season, he has something to prove. I mean, we're talking about 3-time champion, 2-time MVP, first unanimous ever. And that guy, with all those accolades, all the, the All-Star games, has something to prove. So I thought it was crazy. But, like, I think he's proved it. You look at that Warriors team, I don't think they're as bad as everybody say. As far as, like, I like Wiggins. He's giving you about, 18, 19 points a game. I like Oubre. He started off horrible. Obviously, we know what Draymond Green is to a team. They're not that deep. They're not as bad as everybody say, but they are. Like, this would put Steph Curry to the test. If he could carry this team, he's great. And it looks like, he's going to probably carry them to the 8th seed. A lot of people there had him playing in the playoffs. When I made my projection for Golden State, Klay Thompson wasn't down yet. But it's what makes it more impressive, too, is not only he proved he still got it, he's, 32 this year? Like, you talk about he's 32, kind of the end of his prime, and this might be the best year you've seen from him so far, including that unanimous MVP year. Because, Golden State have been in, the 5th seed right now. You'd be talking about Steph Curry's the MVP. He's had a crazy stretch. They started winning games. They were, the 10th seed. He started going crazy. They started winning games. Now they have a realistic shot. Golden State, to me, is a team I don't want to see in the first round if I'm Utah or Phoenix, preferably Phoenix. If I'm Phoenix, I don't want to see Golden State in a 7-game series. I don't think I want to see the Lakers either. I think Phoenix is going to get dealt the bad hand because of how Steph Curry is. We know Chris Paul doesn't really – it's he doesn't play that great against Steph Curry. I don't know what it is, but it just seems like Steph Curry always outdoes Chris Paul. So I think even with Steph Curry going crazy the way he is, I think that I think Golden State is a tough out for Phoenix or Utah, but more so Phoenix. Like, I think Phoenix is the team. I say it's a tough call for them because I don't see them beating the Lakers in a 7-game series. I definitely don't. I could see them losing to Golden State, and that's all because of what Steph Curry doing this year. And to think that they would win a first-round playoff game against a hot team like Phoenix, to me, that just goes to show how great. Like, to me, if somebody says that, and even if they disagree, but if somebody says that and agrees with that, that goes to show how great you think Steph Curry is. Right. Even if you disagree, I understand. But, like, if you like, man, you do have a point, and it's the Phoenix matchup that I like for Golden State. It's like, man, if you do think that could happen, that's because you believe in how great Steph Curry is. If you think there's no chance in the world, you're looking at the rest of the Golden State team, and you're like, man, Steph Curry can't do it alone. But if you think there's a possibility, it's because you know, like, man, Steph Curry is that great. He's proved he could carry a team. You don't expect a 6'1", 6'2" guy being the best player on your team to carry your team to the 1 seed in a sense when your supporting cast isn't that good. But for what he's done, Klay Thompson went out, they kind of counted, Golden State out of the picture. Now they look dangerous. They look like a team you don't want to have to play in the first round. Whether they win or lose, that's just typically when you're a 1 or 2 seed, that's not your first round matchup you want.
No.
You want it as easy as possible, and you talk about a possible 6-7 game series first round. That makes it tough for a team like that going forward, and that has everything to do with Steph Curry.
And obviously he's an icon. He's changed the game, but he's a winner also. And I don't like to say, oh, this guy's a winner, this guy's not a winner, but he just has the self-awareness to me that very few superstars have. Typically, when you're the first ever unanimous MVP, you don't take a back seat to KD. Like, a lot of people would not have done that. Like, no, I'm the guy. I just got a unanimous MVP. I'm not doing that. And I've always been a Steph Curry guy because of that quality that he had. Now, everyone, when I said that people do their list and you got Magic, some people put Isaiah, some people put Curry, then Isaiah. And then you go down the list. To me, I don't think this is really going against the grain, but I'm actually more worried about where he goes all time in the top 10, because I think he has an opportunity to do that. I know a lot of people do their point guard list. I'm like, forget about the point guard list. When you look at how he's changed the game, you look at the hardware, you look at the championships, you look at the MVPs, he was on an all-time great, in my opinion, the greatest team of all time, pure talent-wise, and one game was him and the Durant Warriors. That's just, you can't guard them. Bless you. You go with that. I'm going with Steph Curry. I think he has an opportunity to crack the top 10 of all time. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, because I think he's right outside right now. Like, yeah. I actually had this conversation with somebody else, and I think there's 2 players in the NBA right now that are outside the top 10 looking in and have a chance. And I think it's Kevin Durant, and I think it's Steph Curry.
Agreed.
I think those 2 players are on the outside of the top 10 looking in. I think, Kendrick Perkins, I've seen his list on ESPN. He has Steph Curry as the 3rd greatest point guard right now behind Isaiah Thomas, and he's still playing. Magic Johnson is in the top 10. If Steph Curry, in majority of people's eyes, jumps Isaiah Thomas and becomes the 2nd greatest point guard of all time, he would have an argument, because I don't have Isaiah Thomas in my top 10. So if I rank Steph Curry behind him, I can't rank him higher than Isaiah Thomas. To me, in the all-time list, I just can't put somebody ahead of somebody if I have them behind you at your position. But I think Steph Curry is past Isaiah Thomas. Like, I think people are just afraid to say it because he's still playing. You outside of LeBron James and Kobe Bryant when he was playing, they don't like to put players that on that hierarchy that high up there while they're still playing. I mean, Kevin Durant's creeping in there, and he has a chance to really be in there. But outside of LeBron and Kobe, and that's because they were getting those chasing Jordan in a sense, guys who are still playing, they wait until their careers are over when it's all said and done, especially in the era of playing with LeBron, who we know he's one of the greatest to ever do it. Wherever you have him, he's top 5 on almost everybody's list unless you just hate LeBron. So he's one of the greatest players to ever do it. So you're still playing in that era. So I think Steph Curry going to be in the top 10 when it's all said and done. Like I said, he has greatest shooter of all time next to his name. I think it's not even close. You talk about 3 championships, 2 MVPs, 1 unanimous. only knock on Steph Curry right now that I think people
Final.
would put Isaiah is that Finals MVP, and I almost feel like everybody knows he deserved it over Iguodala. I'm sorry.
Prisoner of the moment thing. They made an adjustment in the lineup and it clearly impacted their team. But Iguodala was never more valuable than Steph Curry. You look at the stats. If you took Steph Curry off those Warriors, they're not beating the Cavaliers. They're not. Even with the roster that LeBron had and the injuries, they're not doing that.
And you look at LeBron's numbers, and like Iguodala got praised for stopping LeBron, but this is the same guy that we were talking about. People would literally talk about he might win Finals MVP as the loser. Like they could lose and he could win Finals MVP. That's the argument, and then you give it to the guy who played defense on him. That just
up to LeBron averaging. He slowed him down to 35 points per game. Like, come on, man.
LeBron had one of the greatest. That was LeBron in that series had the greatest Finals performance that resulted in a loss. Nobody's ever played that great in the Finals and lost. So I mean, and Steph Curry, I could see if he was a slouch in that series. He still averaged like 22, 23 points a game in that series. I get it. He didn't average 30, and that's the expectation for the superstar players. You got to average almost 30. You know, Kevin Durant, an efficient 28 or something like that. But, I mean, that's the knock on him right now. I don't think it should be because I think he got shafted of that Finals MVP. But that's the knock is he doesn't have a Finals MVP. And if you hold that much weight on a Finals MVP, on a two-time champion or three-time champion, two-time MVP, greatest shooter of all time, and you don't want to give him his flowers because of a Finals MVP. I mean, it matters, I guess, but not to guys like Steph Curry. That matters to me. That matters when you chasing the greatest of all time. Like that would matter for LeBron James if he had 4 championships and only one Finals MVP, but you say he's better than Jordan. It matters when we talk about like the top 3 or 4 players. Outside of that, I don't think it matters if I'm ranking Steph Curry over, I don't know.
Great point.
It's tough to even, but it's just, I don't know if that matters, putting him over because he doesn't have a Finals MVP. Like, he still has 2 MVPs. He's going to have something to his name that somebody ahead of him doesn't have. And the easiest thing is going to be greatest shooter of all time.
Because we don't do that with how many Finals MVPs does Magic Johnson have? Does Kareem have? We don't do that. We only do it with the LeBron, Jordan. You may do it with the Kobe, who has 2 Finals MVPs because the other 3 were Shaq's. But other than that, you really don't do that. So that's a great point. I appreciate your time. So I want to get right into this last topic with you is if you were David Griffin, the GM of the Pelicans, and you have, which I think is the number 1 watch in the league, Zion Williamson, who may be the next face of the NBA. May not always be the best player, but I think he'll be the next face. A generational type talent, year 2, already breaking records, averaging as many points as he does with the highest efficiency, 60%, clearly unstoppable. And it's very rare do you ever have a talent like that. So you're in a unique position. You're David Griffin. What do you do with this roster? Because you have a player which has had injuries, obviously. So you want to maximize your time while you have it. So what would you do if you were David Griffin with Zion Williamson, with this roster, with the Pelicans? What would you do to win right now?
That's another tough question because I think coaching is the issue this year. Because you look at the roster, Lonzo Ball, that man has really played really good this year. Like, I think he's put himself on the map. Lonzo's played really good. His jump shot has improved. He's kind of becoming the player we thought he would be. I mean, I know the expectations were through the roof because of his dad. But you see him right now, and you're like, man, this is the Lonzo Ball we thought we were going to see, his rookie year with the Lakers. This is the guy we thought, like, if he was playing like this off the rip, he might have been the one kept instead of Kuzma. Just for the simple fact you would have had a guy who could run the offense outside of LeBron James. That's why they bring in a guy like Schroeder because he can handle the ball when LeBron's not on the court. Lonzo would have been that guy, and because he doesn't demand a lot of shots, that would have been perfect for the Lakers, even if he was a 6-man. And then you look at Brandon Ingram. I mean, I know he didn't make an all-star game this year, but that's just because the Pelicans were bad. They failed whatever expectations they had. I mean, to not even be in the play-in tournament, like the play-in tournament gives teams like the Pelicans a chance to make the playoffs, even in a rough season. So, like, for them to not – I think it's coaching. I don't think Van Gundy – I mean, obviously J.J. Redick got out of there, but he wasn't excited about, being with Van Gundy before the season started. Zion is playing like he's elevated to a level where, like you said, he's probably going to be the face of the league. Right along, like you're going to hear him, Luka, and like Trae Young. I think those are the next like LeBron, Kobe, D Wade type of stars for the next 10 to 12, 15 years. But it's like, what can you do? Like, without making a big time trade and going all in, what can you really do? You're not going to get a lot of free agents to go to New Orleans. You've seen that with Anthony Davis. There weren't like big time free agents. You had like a Rondo. You were able to get Boogie. And then you had, obviously, Drew Holiday. He was really good. But you have a good young team. I think coaching might be the issue. Like, I don't see any other way. We've seen that team. They have, like I said, they have Brandon Ingram, who's an all-star type player. Zion's a future superstar. He is an all-star right now, all-NBA player, whether he's going to be on your first, second, or third team. He's going to make all-NBA. You have Lonzo Ball, who's taking the right strides as a point guard, and he's developed immensely this year. It's like everything got put together. So do you get rid of either of those players? Like, if you think the only answer would be to get rid of Brandon Ingram or Lonzo Ball and see what you could get for him, because outside of that, they don't have a lot of value. They got some guys who are underratedly good, like Jackson Hayes is a really good big man. But you might just have to change out the coach, because I don't see any other moves they can make to say we're going all in on Zion when nobody wants to go to New Orleans. Like, you've never heard anybody request a trade and say the Pelicans are on my list. Like, if anything, they want out. So I don't really know what they have to do. And what would scare me is that interview, as excited as Zion was to talk about Madison Square Garden. That would be, I'd be living in fear if I was New Orleans, right? Ever since that interview, because he was talking so high on Madison Square Garden, and then he was like, oh, and of New Orleans, of course, as if he don't see himself in New Orleans for the long haul. I don't want to get Knicks fans all riled up and think he's going to the Knicks, but I think like that interview to me said a lot, and I think it said that Zion's not going to be here for the long haul, because he knows there's not much more you can do than what you've done, except we get better together as a group. And I don't see that group being a championship team. No matter how good Zion is, I don't see him, Brandon Ingram, and Lonzo Ball being a big three to win a championship. So I guess you maybe try another coach next year, and if that doesn't work, I'll probably go in panic mode thinking that I'm going to lose Zion, because it's very possible. I just don't see him there in the long haul regardless.
I think, to your point, it's coaching. And I think, not that Van Gundy's a terrible coach, just not the right fit. And I think, one, if you get a different coach, like a Mike D'Antoni comes to mind as far as just with this young offense going up and down, Lonzo Ball pushing the ball up. But if the Pelicans got a different coaching staff, I think changing the culture, like the Knicks has done this year, it's not always about just winning. It's not always about winning a championship. But if you can change the culture and you can get the players to buy in, and you have a coach with the right fit. I mean, look at the Hawks, for example. Same roster, but just a different coaching hire, different coach, all of a sudden they're clicking. I think the Pelicans have that opportunity with a different coach. And then when you combine that with Brandon Ingram, who's all-star level talent, a Zion Williamson, Lonzo Ball, like you said, who's been playing well, I think you're spot on. I think coaching would be the first step for everything.
But that window, the only thing is, this was Zion's second year, so he's going into his third year next year. That window's small. Like, that's the thing is, if you move on from Van Gundy, you have to get it right. There's no way you're keeping a Zion Williamson if going into year 4, that's his fourth coach in 4 years. So like, if you do move on from Van Gundy next year, you have to get it right. You have to make playoffs next year. You know, there's a whole bunch of pressure, because if you're looking at, all right, we moved on from Van Gundy, the next coach didn't work out, and whether it be, Atlanta Hawks don't keep a Nate McMillan on the staff, as a head coach after this season, and he becomes a free agent coach, and you go after him, I think he'd be a really good get. He's a winner. He doesn't win championships. I know we can talk about, but Nate McMillan wins. Like you said, look at what he's done with Atlanta. He fills in as the interim head coach. And I mean, outside of the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference, Atlanta looked just as good as everybody else. You could easily see them beat New York, Miami, Boston, Washington, however you want to go in the playoffs. Atlanta is just as good as any of those other teams. I think it's the Bucks, the Nets, Sixers, and then everybody else. But I think that everybody else got real tough ever since McMillan came. But you have to get the coaching right. And so if Mike D'Antoni, I think he could be the answer. But if Zion's looking for a championship in New Orleans, to convince him to stay is not going to happen. It could kind of be like, I look at Zion and I think about LeBron James, and I don't even think about it as a talent perspective. I think about it, LeBron stayed too long in Cleveland the first time. He was there, his first 7 years? LeBron probably should have never re-signed with Cleveland. I know it's, home. It's the home state. It's down the street from where he's from. He feels like he owed them. But he should have left after his rookie deal. I think Zion's going to see that, and he might do the same thing. We're in a player empowerment league. They move. That's just, you have to accept it. That's just what it is. And I think Zion especially, don't let the Knicks, my biggest fear, it's not even a fear, but my biggest fear if I'm Griffin is the fact that he was so in love with playing in Madison Square Garden. You see what the Knicks are doing. They're young, so those guys are only going to get better. They established the culture with the coach who's going to be there. As long as they continue to improve, Tibbs is going to be there for the next 5, 6, 7 years at least, unless they just hit a brick wall. So Zion sees all that, and he looks like, maybe he feels like, I'm the missing piece in New York. I'd love to play in New York. I mean, New York is like the mecca of basketball. It meant everything, back in the day, it meant everything to play in the Garden. But now, like, in today's era, from like the 2000s on, you had your best game in Madison Square Garden. I mean, Kobe went crazy. Melo, LeBron, D-Wade, like all those guys, the opposing team. You was there at the Knicks in Madison Square Garden to watch the opposing player go for 60, 50-something. Like everybody, a lot of people that had some of their best games there. But I don't think there's any way they keep Zion. Because I don't think a culture change it's going to make a difference so you can establish a culture. But the hardest part is being a small market team, establishing anything when you're not a free agent destination. That's the worst part about being a small market team and getting some of the best players coming out of the draft is it's tough to keep them there for that long because you don't have much to offer. Like unless they are LeBron James who can win no matter what. Like you look at the team he took to the finals. He had incentive to stay because he was that great. But is Zion the guy where he just, no matter the circumstance, you see it this year, no matter the circumstance, he is young though, but in like year 4 or 5, the way you see LeBron, is he the guy that's going to, no matter his circumstance, he's taking them to a championship. So right. I just don't see a way that Zion stays in New Orleans. And I don't know. I don't see any other team. I hate doing this to Knicks fans, but I don't see any other team but the Knicks. The way that man spoke with passion as if he was in a Knicks uniform that night, that almost seemed like a dream to him to play for the Knicks. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like, man, my dream came true to play in the Garden. So he's going to have an opportunity at some point. And the only advantage New Orleans has is they can offer more money to him than somebody else. But if you want to win a championship, and obviously Zion, face of the league means endorsements. I take a pay cut here a little bit to ultimately try and win a championship. So, yeah, I just don't see a way Zion stays in New Orleans.
No, yeah, unless something drastically changes, like the culture, the coaching, or you get somebody else, I could definitely see Zion being a Knick. Mo, I appreciate your time. Where can people find you? Instagram, Twitter, your show, where's it available, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, Instagram at Upper Flames Pod or Mo_Cheese15. Those are my personal accounts. Is more so what I use. You can listen to a podcast on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and I also just launched my YouTube channel, so go check that out. It's Mo Upper Flames on YouTube. So I post all my interviews and stuff that I do with people there, all my podcasts that I do live end up going on YouTube. So definitely check that out and get that a subscription. And yeah, bro, I appreciate you for having me on. It's always great talking hoops with you, bro.
Yes, sir. It always is. You're always welcome. I know we'll do a lot more in the future. So I appreciate your time. You enjoy your family. Until next time, we'll talk soon.
100%. All right, bro.